everything they know from their environment, through play and from role modeling of Christ-like behavior during this play interactions. When I started attending a church with my children, they were small. I saw this advertisement for a preschool teacher here at the church, and I thought, oh, well, I didn't really want to go back to work, but I thought I'll give it a try because I really felt called to that position. I was a brand new believer, and so I was super eager to introduce intentional play to the preschool children, but I approached it teaching them a God with like a childlike enthusiasm because I was learning alongside them. And I discovered that I had this passion for creating like unique experiences and spaces where they can engage in their learning, making them excited about coming to church and learning more about Jesus. So today I'm just going to go over a few things, a few thoughts on how I approach preschool ministry, both in our weekday preschool that we have here and in our Sunday school. See if I can. There we go. So many people look at preschool ministry as just simply babysitting, something for kids to do while their parents or their oldest siblings are doing the really important work of going to church. They believe that preschoolers are too little to worship, pray, or have a relationship with Jesus. And I believe the exact opposite. Studies show that 85% of people who come to Christ do so before the age of 18. And I know we've all used this quote when we're talking to our lead pastors or the boards or congregants to show that we need new volunteers or budget or more support. But realistically, a child's brain is developing to 80% of its adult size by the age of 3. And a baby's brain can form over 1,000 neural connections every second. So between the ages of 3 and 4, a child learns 200 to 2,000 words. So we have an amazing opportunity to be intentional in choosing the vocabulary that gives preschoolers words to reinforce that God made them and loves them. Preschoolers have the natural ability to accept they're loved and created for a purpose by God. There's no other time frame that has so much potential to lay spiritual foundation in a person's life. In Sharing God's Big Love with Little Lives by Miss Patty Cake. I don't know if you guys know Miss Patty Cake. I love her. She calls preschool age a rare window of opportunity because they have the greatest capacity for learning and are willing to accept the information that we give them when we have formed healthy, trusting relationships with them. I think that like understanding the development expectations of preschoolers can help us to know what they are capable of learning and the best ways to teach them. Lifeways Ministries has a fantastic resource called Growing in God's Word. It's levels of biblical learning. There's a pamphlet that you can order and give to parents as well that shows us the levels of biblical learning, which covers like 10 biblical concepts. It teaches them about God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, Bible, salvation, creation, church, family, community, and world. And that children can learn and study the God's word, but it shows like the levels in which they can learn. It demonstrates how spiritual development occurs, like building blocks, and each concept and awareness of who God is gained in a scaffold effect. So once they fully grasp a concept, then they can begin to gain new insights into different concepts. For example, once children know who God is and that he loves them, then they can start to build an understanding of who Jesus is and what he has done for them. So there's no rush in filling the kids with knowledge that will overwhelm them and not stick. We just have to focus on the fundamentals in preschool. So I approach preschool ministry with these 3 values in mind: relationship, content, and environment. So with relationship, when children come to preschool ministry, I want them to know that they are important to me and to our church family. Everyone has a place in the church, and we value them for who they are right now, not just for who God planned them to be. They should feel welcome, seen, and loved. So our environments, when we set up our classrooms, we try to make kid-friendly, bright colors, toys on different levels, posters, things that are like welcoming to them. I make it a point to welcome each child by name if possible, and notice that they are wearing what they're wearing, if they've changed their hair. I try to make a point to know if it's their birthday or ask them things about themselves. During attendance, I try to do silly things like ask them what they had for breakfast or what their favorite ice cream is or things like that. They seem silly and trivial, but they're so important to them, and it shows that we care about who they are. I try to make sure that I greet them on their level whenever possible. So making contact shows them that we value them and they really want to hear what they have to say. So I just point out in the pictures, like the teachers are always on the floor, at the kids' level, talking to them and not talking at them, just so that they feel important and included in the discussion. I try to think of a Sunday morning from a child's perspective. If your mom wakes you up, they're yelling at you to brush your teeth and get dressed, you have to wear the right outfit, piles you into a car, drags you into a building where they're talking to people and you know nobody, marches you to a classroom, drops you off with a probable stranger, and then just leaves. It can be so overwhelming if you think about it like that. And so I try to think of how do they feel comfortable when they walk in the room, because that can be a scary experience. So if we greet them like we know them and care about them, you can immediately see a difference in their body language. Children learn better from someone that they have a relationship with. And if they know they can trust you, they know the concepts that you're trying to teach them can be trusted too. So our attitudes and actions about preschool ministry show children that God values them. It's not just babysitting. There's an article on Ministry Sparks team called why do we need children's ministry in the church? And the article outlines the difference between a manager's mindset to ministry or a minister's mindset to ministry. And I just really thought this was quite poignant about how I approach children's ministry. So a manager's mindset is when we see a group of children that can be managed by entertainment. So as long as they're having fun, everything's fine, or they can be pacified. So as long as they're being quiet, it's all good. And then in a manager's mindset, a successful preschool ministry is one that no one gets hurt, all the adults can stay in church and no one has to be called from their church, and kids leave happy. But from a minister's mindset, we ask God to help us to see each child as an individual, someone we can build a relationship with. As we take time to build loving relationships, children come to see, hear, and experience how the love of Jesus looks, sounds, and behaves. A minister's mindset causes us to truly hear, see, and love each child with the purpose of building a relationship that shows the child who Jesus is, while teaching them the word of God. But it's not just building a relationship with the children that is important. Building a relationship with the parents, I find, is essential. If we make an effort to get to know the parents, it demonstrates to them that they can trust us and their child is safe with us. Kids pick up on this right away and they trust their parents. And so if their parents trust us, they're more likely to feel like they're safe and it's okay to be with us. Parents want to know that their child matters and that they're cared for. And if we put a little effort into seeing them, they will feel valued. So let's just face it, if the kids love preschool ministry, and the parents will love it too. They don't want to fight with their children to bring them to Sunday school. They want to feel safe and loved, and because it's easier for them as parents too. So building the relationship with the parents is also essential because it helps parents feel connected to the building and to the other community members. And usually parents or preschools are looking for those connections. And so once they build those connections, it's easier to have them serving, and then it just builds the community in the preschool ministry. So the next thing to consider, I always consider, is content. Content is not necessarily about the Bible stories that we teach or the curriculum that we use. It's more about understanding what is age appropriate for the children, to know and how to teach in order for them to retain it. So as you can see in the pictures, messy play is really important to me. We do a lot of, goops and slimes and Play-Dohs and those kind of things. I think preschoolers are really attracted to that naturally, but it also gives us opportunity to play with them and be involved with them. So cognitively preschool age children are very concrete and literal thinkers. So they have difficult with abstract concepts. It's important to relate learning to real life experiences. That's why hands-on learning is the most effective strategy for us. There's a child development expert, Lisa Murphy, known as the Ooey Gooey Lady, who specializes in play. And she demonstrates the value of hands-on learning by showing a group of adults a picture of an apple and asking them to describe it, writing down all the words that they use. Then she gives them a plastic apple and does the same thing. And people can write down just a few words using the plastic apple. And then lastly, she gives a group of people a real apple and asks them to describe it, writing down all of the words they say. But with the picture apple, there was only a couple words. The plastic apple, they could have, touch it a little bit more. And so they could add a few more words. But once they give you a real apple, all the things that the words they could write down were, there became more sensory. So the kids quickly were able to, or the parents were able to say like what it tasted like, what they felt like, what they see, what they touch, what they hear. And so when I approach curriculum planning, I try to think of ways children can touch, move, explore, watch, taste, hear, and wonder about the concepts that we're teaching. So socially, preschoolers are very egocentric at this age. They see the world through their own eyes and are developmentally incapable of understanding others' emotions and perspectives. Emphasizing the ideas that we are special to God and we've created by God and belong to God and are dearly loved by God are essential to our program. We need to role model because we are the picture of God's love and care to them. We are their first connection outside of their families to who God is. Spiritually, preschoolers don't yet have a built-in control or conscience to help them do the right things for its own sake. They're not able to grasp the concepts of sin fully and Jesus paying that price for our sins. They're not able to understand that when they do something wrong, we still love them or God still loves them and they're still lovable. This concept develops much later. So that's why it can be a little tricky teaching them about those kind of things at this age because they can't fully grasp that concept. It's important, however, for preschoolers to sense the wonder and awe about who God is and what he's done. So I never stop sharing those stories with them because it's important for them to see how valuable that is and how awe-inspiring that is. They're not too young to understand his power in tangible ways. I think this is an important time to express to preschoolers how amazing that God's love is, no matter what. When we teach religious concepts, we have to keep them simple. So again, we talk about things like God loves us, we love God, we obey God, Jesus is God's son, we can talk to God through prayer, just really simple concepts that we can build on later. And then learning comes with repetition. And so in our program, we tend to repeat the same concepts over and over and over again in everything we do. Then the environment that we establish paired with the positive relationships and the age-appropriate content go a long way to creating effective preschool ministries experiences. The environment that we create matters. The way the physical environment of a classroom is designed and configured influences how children feel and how they act and behave. You can control a lot of classroom management behaviors just by how you structure your classrooms, whether it be through routine, the layout, the equipment that you have. All of those things impact how kids behave and feel in the classroom. It can affect it a lot how they learn as well. And so providing opportunities for children to play in quality settings shows kids that we value them and recognize their play is important to their learning. Because preschoolers learn through this play, they learn from exploration of materials and being able to relate what they already know to the play that they are doing. So I always try to relate things to experiences they've had and things that they already know. And so they can get excited about sharing that stuff with you. I just like to consider the materials that are available in the space that you have. Preschoolers are very sensory learners and learn best when they can touch and hear and smell and feel. So I provide opportunities for them to explore lots of sand, water, sensory, lots of block building, dramatic play. All of these things help them to connect concepts to create concrete understanding. So I encourage teachers to get on the child's level, evaluate the space from that angle, look and see if there's opportunities for children to explore on different physical levels. So can they play while they're standing up? Can they play when they're on the floor? Can they play at a sitting level or standing? And just see from the child's level what it looks like. And then create a sense of wonder and awe in the classroom by being creative, changing out the layouts, being willing to take risks with the play. Not a lot of teachers like to give kids finger paint, but I love those messy things where they can really like get involved and creative with things because then it becomes their own. Once they start playing with it, it becomes their own thing. Um, we play an important role in keeping the children engaged during play. And so asking questions and helping them to think things through helps them to make connections to concrete things. So like as you can see in one of the pictures down here, our teachers are always like playing, like being active with the kids, asking them questions, playing alongside them. Even, you know, the bottom of the pyramid, they're just right there supporting all the kids play. Even our male youth leaders who our youth pastor gets dressed up and becomes roles in our classroom just to keep it more interesting for the kids. I just always encourage the kids to, or the teachers, the more enthusiastic that we behave is the more enthusiastic the kids are going to be about something. So I encourage them to be silly, to have fun, and to play. So during our large group times, I suggest to our teachers that they need to know who their audience is. Preschools are not able to sit for a long time, as we all know. So being flexible with your agenda, giving them breaks and allowing time for them to be active. So get them standing up to do a verse, getting them sitting down for a story, then standing up again to do prayer. Just really moving from position to position can go a long way to helping us get through our lessons. Remember that these are not little adults, so we don't have to talk to them like they are. Preschoolers are active learners, so I never talk at them. I always talk with them. So making sure I'm asking lots of questions, letting them show us what they already know. Kids get really excited if you ask them, you know, who Moses was, and they know all about him. So letting them share that information with us can be a valuable tool, I think, in our large group lessons. Preschoolers love to please us, and so they want to impress us with what they know. And if you want them to be enthusiastic, like I said, you getting excited about what they're doing is gonna help them a lot to be excited. I always suggest also establishing a consistent routine in the classroom. It doesn't mean that you can't ever change it or that it's the same every single time. It just means that kids do better when they know what to expect. So when they know what generally is going to happen in a day, they can manage their behaviors accordingly so that they can roll with the day quite easily. And then all forms of behavior are forms of communication. They are trying to tell us something. And so always be willing to assess how your environment is affecting the behavior in the classroom. If you find that children are running or always running, consider moving furniture so there's no running track. If children are fighting over a doll, make sure that you have enough dolls for the number of kids that you have. I think in the next picture here. Yeah. So just making sure, again, like the teachers are always engaged with all of the kids. There's plenty of materials. Yeah, in this picture with the kids at the table, they were baking, but every kid got a turn to do something. So they're always engaged in what's happening in the classroom with the kids. So I think that's it.
Wow, that was excellent. I would love to be able to open it up for some questions, but I just wanted to ask one myself
Mhm.
before we get started on questions. What you repeated a few times about I talk with the children,
Mhm.
not at the children. So could you give us maybe a little sample of that? And I love what you call your preschoolers. Could you just even give us a sentence, like a typical sentence that you would say to them?
Hard out of context. I think like during circle time, we always call them my friends. So we try not to use like good morning, boys and girls. We always say my friends. We want the children to feel invested about all the kids in the classroom. So we want them to know that we care about them as our friends. And so we tend to make things kind of a surprise. So we always you know, like hide a prop during large group, for example, and they have to guess what it is. Or we will I think in one of the pictures we had cups wrapped up, for example, and they had to break through them in order to get to the Bible verse for the day. So we really like to engage them in what we're learning. And so it's not just you know, us lecturing them about something that really won't have any meaning to them at that point. So if we are asking them ways to get involved, either, you know, finding the clues for what our Bible story might be that day, or I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, last week we had we had different objects and they had to guess what story we were talking about based on the objects. So just simple ways for them to start the conversation a little bit.
Yeah, really good. Really good. I hope that there's some other questions there, maybe some explanations on what kinds of centers you set up,
Mhm.
and maybe even give a sample if we pick a Bible story like Moses, pick a Moses story and what are some typical centers you would have set up?
Well, maybe I can just show by these pictures, for example. Um, these pictures we were talking about, let's see, where are we here? I can, we were talking about creation, I think, in one of these. Oh no, sorry, we were talking about loaves and fishes. So the kids, we had like a fishing station, we had Play-Doh that looked like bread dough that they could put in the plastic oven. We had weaving crafts and or activities that they could weave for the basket. Um, we had the craft table. So we had water with fish in them. So I try to think of all the sort of the stations that we could have. So I usually try to do sand, water, tabletop, manipulative, block, and creative dramatic play, and try to think of ways that we could put the story in those stations. So we would probably give them baskets and plastic fish in the house corner, for example. We would give them, um, like I said, fish and nets in the water table, the plain Play-Doh to make with dough, that sort of thing, so that it's the story is encompassed in all the different centers that we would have in the class
I
as much
noticed
as
in
possible.
yeah, as much as possible. I noticed that in your art center, it's not necessarily a coloring sheet, but it looks like they're making a sheep. How did you make that sheep? Because I know it's very
Oh,
tactile what you were doing there.
yeah. So the sheep that we did that time were bubble wrap that the kids painted, and then they could put together the sheep with the bubble wrap.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just a different sensory experience, right?
Yeah.
Are there some other questions there of things that Shannon said, or maybe going back to a picture and getting more details?
I have a question, Shannon, about engagement. Um, you mentioned like stand up, stand up, sit down, that can really help with engagement during your kind of center or circle time.
Yeah.
I think one hurdle that we are trying to overcome with our preschool ministry right now is establishing more of a routine, because in previous years there hasn't really been that approach to the ministry. So I'm just like wondering if you have other tips for engagement, and just for helping the kids kind of see that this is how we're going to consistently be experiencing this time. And I mean, like you said, it can change, but just getting that kind of baseline set. Would just love to hear if you have other tips for that.
Yeah, I would say during my large group time, what we try to do is be really consistent in how we present it. So we always do, like you always do the same things. We always do a Bible point, a Bible story, a verse, and then we do our worship time afterwards. And so I try to be really consistent in knowing what to expect. It just looks different. I always like the kids to know that, because I don't think a lot of kids put it together, that we're telling them a Bible story, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they know it comes from the Bible. So we make a really big deal in our circle times about saying that our Bible is our favorite book. Does anybody know why? And then so we let them respond to us by saying it's about God, and so that we start the same every time. Just letting them know that every story that we tell them comes from the Bible. And it seems silly, but the kids really kind of latch on to those same little phrases every time. And it seems to like center them into knowing, okay, this is our learning time. And then we get kind of silly after that. We'll do silly things with the verse, or getting them to stand up, sit down, songs, those kind of things. But I always do try to make it really personal too. So when I start off a circle time or a small group time or whatever we call them, I always like the kids to all have a turn to talk if we can. So just a really quick, like when we do attendance, for example, I always tell them, tell me your name and then tell me your favorite whatever, like what your favorite ice cream is, or just give them each a turn to talk, and so that they know that they're part of that meeting and it's not just us talking to them. I just find it like it's a simple way to just kind of engage them in what's happening.
Right. Or even, I think I heard you sing Higgledy Piggledy Bumblebee. Can you say
Yeah.
your name for me? And it's so repetitive and catchy that all the kids would catch on and be able to say their name.
Yeah,
And
I actually don't even know if it's a real song, but we just started singing it and we have them clapping their knees as they say it, and the kids kind of latch on to it. And so every time we go around the circle and every child gets to say their name, and then we all say hello to them. And it just seems like a silly way to get them to feel like they're important.
And so such a great transitional activity when you're bringing them to circle time away from center play or whatever, and you're wanting them to concentrate, doing something all together like that is so much more effective than saying, shh, everybody quiet now.
For sure.
It's just start the song, start the jingle, and they'll just come right along with you.
And
Mhm.
I found that a lot of times the kids would kind of grow up in Sunday school together and they wouldn't even know the other kids sometimes. Like they didn't
Mhm.
even know, a child's name. And so singing a silly song where they all got to introduce themselves each time, the kids actually got to know who each other was, and they actually felt more connected to each other that way. And they would start pointing out, oh, that's Sally to their mom. And then I could see connections forming between the families too a little bit. So it has a double-edged sword.
Shannon, what would you say to the children's ministries leader that might be online here or hear this recorded, where they have spaces that it's mostly gross motor play,
Mhm.
it's supervised gross motor play for ages 3 to 5, and you'd like to be able to change that gradually or change that to a more play centers, discovery play with circle time teaching sort of method. Could you kind of help us learn how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we're just doing large group space activities, I think we're just missing on valuable opportunities. So I guess like I would introduce a circle time, a teaching time first. I would just do those silly games with at a circle. I would do like your story and those sort of things. Again, I think like using props, sometimes using a ball to roll to a child and getting them to say their name or getting them to say the Bible point to the day or whatever. Just like simple things like that can get them excited actually about coming to circle time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned some examples on how to tell story. We noticed that there was one of the youth pastors wearing a costume. You mentioned props, um, storybooks. Oh, I see costumes.
Yeah, so this
So,
was just our one of our Christmas lessons, and the kids were so engaged in the story because they each got to wear a costume. And so we told the story over and over and over again that day because each child wanted to turn to wear each of the costumes. And so we had no problem going over the story, 10 times that day and switching out the costumes, and we kind of just let all the rest of our routine for the day kind of go because this was an important learning opportunity for the kids. Um, they were engaged in it and wanted to keep learning, and so we just kept going with it.
wow. And I bet they could retell that story when they went home.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Hi, Shannon.
Hi.
So I'm in the process right now of wanting to train some of my leaders because we've got two Down syndrome kids, one that just came into preschool and one is in nursery, but will soon be moving up. And so I'm working with the parents to create like sign language signs as well, like even for the nonverbal nursery kids so that they can point to that and then teach them some simple sign language. Do you have any like experience with kids with Down syndrome and what has worked?
Yeah, so it's really tough because each child with any special need is different. And so I really try to get to know like what the parents are doing at home or in other school settings and see what's working for them there. Again, I really like to have a good routine that we follow the same time because then they know what to expect. And then I like to have lots of visual cues. So yeah, what you say, making like little visual signs and stuff is perfect. And some of our volunteers will actually wear it on a what do you call it, lanyard around their neck with the cards, so that the child always has them nearby to show them what they want or what the next thing is going to happen, is like what's going to happen next. Um, so yeah, I would say like lots of visual cues, kind of understanding what their abilities are and sort of where they need some extra support from the parents is super helpful. Because honestly, like we have kids sometimes that are dropped off and they don't tell us they have a special need, and you're just guessing at that point, and it's so hard to support a child when they're nonverbal and can't tell us what they need. So really like getting to know from the parents what's working for them is very helpful. And I think you said you're training some volunteers, but really having volunteers that know them and can consistently work with them, even if it's every other week, but getting to know who they are, and what things they like, is really helpful in the classroom.
Yeah, one thing that we're trying to do is have the same team leader with the one girl so
Yeah.
that there's that consistency. But I have asked the two moms to actually help run the training session because who knows the kid better than the parents, right?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I don't know if you guys find this, but I found a lot of times with kids with special needs, parents are really having a hard time disclosing what the needs are, and even if there are needs at all. I don't know if they've, you know, not been allowed to participate in things before, or some churches have even asked kids to leave if they have special needs. And I just think, I mean, that breaks my heart, first of all, but so I think parents are afraid to let us know what the child's needs are, but that's going to best help us to work with their child and to make them feel comfortable and part of the group.
Thanks.
And
You can
I
also type questions in the chat if you would prefer that. But sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
Okay, I was just gonna say a lot of times with our kids with special needs, we have a lot of sort of prop boxes that we have that are just full of like sensory, like the quiet bottles, the chew toys, like anything we might need, that kind of travels with the kiddos. So if one thing's not working, you can quickly go to something else.
Again, I wanted to mention anybody who wanted to go on a field trip, it doesn't have to be Sunday. It can be midweek. I'm not sure how different your methods are during the week than on the weekend, Shannon, but I think that they could probably get a pretty good idea if they stopped by to check in on your preschool center.
Yeah, definitely the way that they teach is the same. We don't necessarily do a Bible verse and a point in a story every weekday preschool, but the teaching sort of methods are exactly the same. So
Right, and just seeing how centers are set up, and if they came and you'd be able to talk them through the tour.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be awesome. So I just want to encourage anybody who can go to Saints Church, visit Shannon weekday or Sunday, and she could really help to lead you through what a creative and engaging, effective preschool ministry is. Anyone else? I don't want to cut anyone short.
I also would just say that I really like thinking of centers. So if you're ever kind of stuck on a story and you can't think of, what kind of areas you could, do play in with the classroom, I'm willing to kind of brainstorm with you too.
There's a question that just came into the chat here. Someone who has a special needs boy. He is always on a phone during church to keep him busy. Parents haven't sent him to class, but she would like him to come to class. Is there are ways to engage him being busy with some other toys, even if he doesn't engage in the lesson? And do you find that that happens where you have attention spans or children with exceptionalities that just can't sit in the circle? What do you do to help them along?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, each child is developmenting at such a different rate. And so we kind of try to meet them where they're at. And so if a child is having trouble sitting, we welcome them to the circle time. We try to include them by still calling out their name or, encouraging them to, what do you think about this, and saying things like that. But if they can't sit, we let them kind of play as we're doing circle time. Then if they come back to, jump when we're doing a jumping song, great. And then we usually try to have someone paired with them that can kind of watch them, even if it's from a distance, while they're playing and we're doing a large group activity. Yeah, I just always want them to feel included. Because they're used to having an electronic device, it might be a little harder to sort of transition them to not having an electronic device. So I would say see what they like to play with at home, and then I'll try to introduce something like that at home, like in the classroom setting, just so that they're familiar with it, and just try to like slowly integrate them into the classroom.
It kind of sounds like you're just always invitational.
Yeah.
And then you have things that they can quietly play with, not a noisy something, but
Right.
something that they can quietly play with, and then just keep inviting them in with that fresh approach.
We do also have, like, we'll give them the option. Do you want to sit in a chair? Do you want to sit on the floor? Do you want to sit on this ball? Do you like, so there's things like that we can offer them, as well as, having fidget toys and having the weighted blankets or weighted toys. Those sort of things will help some kids to just feel more comfortable sitting.
This is excellent, just excellent material. I'd like to watch this all over again. The good news is we are recording this, and I will put it up on our website under resources in the Children and Family Ministries resources on that page, and also invite you to take a look at our Kids Church Library, everyone. There's lots of different things there that you can access. Anything that we can do to resource you. I am a kindred spirit with Shannon. I was an early childhood educator for a number of years. I ran preschools, and I love the learning that happens at this level, and how it's just so beautiful to see children in their first initial discovery periods of Jesus and who Jesus is and what prayer is, and what it's like to grow up with other Christian kids. So I just really appreciate what you bring, and that you came today with such a beautiful presentation. So